The old grandfather clock in the corner of the Westfield Chess Club struck 9 in the evening. Most of the serious players had already gone home, leaving behind coffee cups, crumpled napkins, and chess pieces scattered across tables. This was when Irina would come in, pulling her cleaning cart behind her, a quiet figure in a gray uniform that seemed to blend into the shadows of the room. Irina had been cleaning the chess club for almost 7 years now. At 43, her hands showed signs of hard work, slightly rough from cleaning products and with short, practical nails. Her brown hair was always tied back in a simple ponytail with a few strands of gray that she never bothered to hide. There was nothing remarkable about her appearance that would make the chess players look twice when they passed her in the hallway. "Evening, Mrs. Nowak," said the night security guard with a friendly nod. He was one of the few people who actually spoke to her. "Good evening, Tom," she replied with a slight accent. She had come to America from Poland 20 years ago, but certain sounds still carried the melody of her homeland. Irina started her usual routine, emptying trash cans, wiping down tables, and vacuuming the plush carpet that had seen better days. As she worked, her eyes would drift to the chessboards left mid-game by players who wanted to continue their matches tomorrow. She never touched these games, treating them with a respect that would have surprised the club members if they had noticed. Tonight, as she dusted around one particular board, her eyes lingered on the pieces. Black was clearly winning, but white had an interesting possibility that the player seemed to have missed. Without thinking, her fingers hovered over a white knight, not touching it, but tracing its potential move in the air. "What do you think you're doing?" Irina jumped, nearly knocking over a nearby bishop. She hadn't realized anyone was still in the room. A group of 4 young men sat in the far corner, expensive drinks in hand, watching her with amused expressions. They were part of the new crowd that had started coming to the club in recent months, wealthy college students who treated chess more as a trendy hobby than a serious pursuit. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, moving away from the board. "I was just cleaning around it." The tallest of the young men stood up and walked over, looking at her with an expression that made her want to disappear into the wallpaper. His expensive watch caught the light as he gestured to the board. "Were you about to move that piece?" he asked, his tone suggesting he found the idea hilarious. "No, sir," she replied, keeping her eyes down and focusing on her cleaning cart. "I know not to touch the games in progress." "But you wanted to, didn't you?" He looked back at his friends with a smirk. "Our cleaning lady thinks she knows chess." His friends laughed, and Irina felt her cheeks grow warm. She should just walk away and continue her work in another room. That's what she normally did when club members were being difficult. But something about the dismissive way he spoke made her pause. "I was just looking," she said. "Well, since you're so interested." The young man swept his hand over the board, knocking all the pieces down. His friends looked surprised, knowing that disturbing a game in progress was against club rules. "Anthony, someone's going to be mad about that tomorrow," one of his friends warned. Anthony shrugged. "I'll just say it was an accident." He began setting up the pieces again, arranging them in their starting positions. "Let's see what our cleaning expert knows about chess." He pointed to the chair opposite him. "Sit." Irina hesitated, looking at the clock. She had 6 more rooms to clean before midnight. "I have work to finish," she said. "Consider this part of your job tonight," Anthony replied, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Entertain us for a few minutes, unless you're scared." His friends had gathered around now, drinks in hand, clearly expecting some form of entertainment at her expense. One of them pulled out his phone, possibly to record her embarrassment. "Put that away," Anthony told him. "No phones during matches, club rules." He winked at Irina. "We're going to give her the full chess club experience." Irina looked at the board, then at the young men, then at her cleaning cart. She should walk away. She had never played chess at the club before, had never even told anyone here that she knew the game. But then she thought about all the nights she had spent watching these boards, mentally playing along with games, seeing possibilities that sometimes even the players missed. 10 minutes, she said quietly. "Then I need to finish my work." Anthony's eyebrows shot up, clearly surprised she had agreed. He gestured grandly to the chair. "Ladies first. You can be white." Irina sat down stiffly, her cleaning uniform making a slight rustling sound against the leather chair usually occupied by lawyers, doctors, and business executives. The chair felt wrong, too fancy for someone like her. But the chessboard, that felt familiar. "Do you even know how the pieces move?" asked one of Anthony's friends, a heavy-set young man with an expensive haircut. Irina didn't answer. She simply reached out and moved her king's pawn forward 2 spaces, the most common opening move in chess. Her hand was steady as she pressed the timer, a gesture she had seen hundreds of times but never performed herself in this room. Anthony's smile faltered just slightly. Perhaps he had expected her to move pieces incorrectly. He quickly recovered and made his own move, a standard response. As the game progressed through the opening moves, Irina played cautiously but competently. She could feel the young men's amusement beginning to shift to something else. By the 10th move, Anthony was taking longer to think, his earlier smirk replaced by a look of concentration. "Where did you learn to play?" he asked suddenly after she made a move that forced him to change his strategy. "My father taught me," she replied simply, not elaborating. She didn't tell them about the countless games played on a homemade board in a small apartment in Krakow. She didn't mention how her father, a factory worker with the hands of a laborer and the mind of a tactician, had taught her that chess was not just a game, but a conversation without words. One of Anthony's friends leaned in, studying the board with newfound interest. "She's not bad," he muttered. Anthony shot him an annoyed look. "Beginning's luck," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. 20 minutes later, far longer than the 10 minutes Irina had agreed to, the game had drawn a small audience. 2 older club members who had been in the library section had wandered over, curious about the unusual scene of a cleaning woman seated at one of the premium tables. The position on the board was now complex and tense. Anthony had played aggressively, sacrificing a knight for what he thought would be a quick attack. But Irina had defended patiently, and now she had the advantage. She moved her bishop diagonally across the board, a quiet move that didn't seem threatening at first glance. "Check," she said softly. Anthony frowned, seeing too late the trap she had set. His king was under attack and his options were limited. He moved his king to the only safe square. Irina then moved her rook to the 7th rank. "Check," she said again. The room had fallen completely silent. Anthony stared at the board, his earlier confidence gone. He moved his king again, but there was a sense of inevitability now. 3 moves later, Irina quietly said, "Checkmate." For a moment, no one spoke. Anthony stared at the board as if expecting the pieces to rearrange themselves. One of the older club members let out a low whistle. "Well played," he said to Irina, his tone carrying genuine respect. Anthony pushed back from the table abruptly. "Beginner's luck," he repeated, but no one, not even his friends, seemed to believe it. Irina stood up, smoothing her uniform. "I need to finish my cleaning now," she said as if nothing unusual had happened. As she turned to go back to her cart, one of the older men stepped forward. He had white hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "Wait," he said. "What's your name?" "Irina Nowak," she replied. "Mrs. Nowak, that was no beginner's game," he said. "Where did you learn to play like that?" For a moment, Irina considered giving her usual quiet answer and returning to her work. But something had changed in the room. For the first time in 7 years, people in the chess club were looking at her, really looking at her and waiting to hear what she had to say. "My father was a good player," she said finally. "We played every evening after dinner. He said I had a gift for seeing patterns." She paused, then added, "I haven't played against a real person since he died 12 years ago." "You haven't played in 12 years?" Anthony asked incredulously, some of his wounded pride giving way to genuine surprise. Irina shook her head. "I play in my mind," she said, gesturing to the club around her. "While I clean, I watch games. I think about what moves I would make." The white-haired man exchanged glances with his friend. "You've been studying games here for 7 years without playing?" Irina nodded, suddenly feeling self-conscious. I should get back to work, she said, reaching for her cleaning cart. Mrs. Nowak, the white-haired man, said, would you consider playing another game sometime? Not tonight, but perhaps tomorrow, when you're not working. Before she could answer, the club's front door opened and more members walked in, shaking off rain from their coats. The moment was broken. Irina nodded politely to the men and wheeled her cart toward the next room, leaving behind a board with a story that would be told and retold around the club in the days to come. Behind her, she heard Anthony say to his friends, I was just having an off night. But there was less conviction in his voice now, and Irina allowed herself a small smile as she disappeared into the next room, invisible once more but somehow changed. The next evening, Irina arrived at the chess club 15 minutes earlier than usual. She had spent the day thinking about the game, replaying it in her mind while she cleaned houses across town. For the first time in years, her hands had trembled slightly as she dusted and scrubbed, not from fatigue but from a strange mix of excitement and fear. She changed into her gray uniform in the small staff bathroom, smoothing down the fabric and checking her appearance in the mirror. Her reflection showed the same person as always, unremarkable, invisible. Yet something had changed. She touched the simple silver locket hanging around her neck, the only piece of jewelry she wore. Inside was a small photo of her father. What have I done, Papa? She whispered to herself. When she stepped into the main hall pulling her cleaning cart, she was surprised to find the club unusually busy for a Tuesday night. Normally, weeknights were quiet, with just a handful of regular players hunched over their boards. Tonight, there were at least 20 people scattered around the room, and several of them looked up when she entered. Irina kept her eyes down, focusing on her cart. Perhaps it was just a coincidence. Maybe there was a tournament she hadn't heard about. Mrs. Nowak, the white-haired man from yesterday, approached her, smiling warmly. Up close, she could see that his suit was expertly tailored and his tie pin was shaped like a chess knight. Good evening, sir, she replied politely, unsure how to address him. Peter Thompson, he said, extending his hand. I'm the club treasurer. I've been a member here for 30 years, though I don't believe we've ever been properly introduced. Irina hesitated, then wiped her hand on her uniform before shaking his. His grip was firm and respectful. I hope you don't mind, but I mentioned your game with Anthony to a few people, he said. Word spread. Now Irina understood the unusual crowd. She felt her cheeks grow warm. I have work to do, Mr. Thompson, she said quietly. Of course, he nodded. But I did mention yesterday about playing another game when you're not working. I was hoping you might consider it. Before Irina could answer, a woman approached them. She was tall and elegant, with silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a bun that reminded Irina of a ballet dancer. Peter, is this her? The woman asked, studying Irina with intelligent eyes. Yes, this is Mrs. Nowak, Mrs. Nowak. This is Dr. Helena Rivera, our club president. Dr. Rivera smiled. Mr. Thompson told me about your game yesterday. I must say beating Anthony is no small feat. He's ranked quite highly in collegiate play. Irina shifted uncomfortably. It was just one game. Chess is never just one game, Dr. Rivera replied. Each match reveals something about the players. She glanced at Irina's cleaning cart. I understand you have work to do, but the club doesn't officially need cleaning until 10. We close at 11. Would you consider playing a few games before you begin your shift? We could adjust your hours accordingly. Irina blinked in surprise. You want me to play chess here? If you're willing, Dr. Rivera said. Several members expressed interest in playing with you after hearing about yesterday's match. Irina's first instinct was to refuse. This world of chess clubs and tournaments belonged to people like Dr. Rivera and Mr. Thompson, educated professionals who had grown up with opportunities she never had. Not to immigrant cleaning women who learned the game on homemade boards. I don't belong here, she said softly. Dr. Rivera's expression softened. Chess is perhaps the most democratic game ever created, Mrs. Nowak. Your background, education, wealth. None of it matters once the pieces are set up. All that counts is how you play. Mr. Thompson nodded in agreement. Besides, this club could use some fresh blood. We've all been playing each other for years. We know each other's tricks too well. Irina thought about it. Her evening cleaning jobs wouldn't start until midnight. She had planned to use the extra time to mend some clothes and prepare food for tomorrow, but the pull of the chessboards was strong. One game, she said finally. Then I must work. Dr. Rivera smiled. Wonderful. May I suggest you play with David first? He's our club champion. Irina felt a flutter of panic. The champion? No, I couldn't. Don't worry, Mr. Thompson interrupted with a wink. David needs to be humbled occasionally. It's good for him. They led her to a table near the center of the room, where a middle-aged man with thick glasses and a thoughtful expression was setting up a board. Around them, other club members pretended not to watch, though their attention was obvious. David, Dr. Rivera said, "This is Mrs. Nowak. She's agreed to play a game before beginning her cleaning duties." David looked up, surprised. He glanced at Irina's uniform, then back at Dr. Rivera with a questioning expression. "Mrs. Nowak beat Anthony Chen yesterday," Mr. Thompson explained. "Rather convincingly, I might add." David's eyebrows rose. "Did she now?" He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, have a seat." "Would you prefer white or black?" "Black," Irina said, surprising herself. Her father had always told her that playing black was harder but taught you more. The game began quietly. David played solidly, making standard opening moves that Irina recognized from the many games she had observed at the club. She responded carefully, not taking risks, trying to get a feel for his style. By the 15th move, a small crowd had gathered around their table. Irina tried to ignore them, focusing only on the 64 squares before her. This was familiar territory, a landscape of possibilities that had been her mental playground for decades. David was good, very good. His moves were precise and thoughtful, setting small traps that Irina had to carefully navigate. But as the middle game approached, she began to see patterns emerging, weaknesses in his position that perhaps even he didn't recognize yet. On move 23, she sacrificed a pawn, a move that caused murmurs among the onlookers. David studied the board carefully before accepting the sacrifice. 3 moves later, she sacrificed a knight as well. "Interesting," David murmured, taking the piece but looking increasingly wary. Mr. Thompson leaned closer to watch, his eyes darting between the board and Irina's calm face. Dr. Rivera stood with her arms crossed, a small smile playing at her lips. On move 30, Irina's strategy revealed itself. The sacrifices had been part of a longer plan, drawing David's pieces out of position and leaving his king exposed. When she moved her queen to h5, David stared at the board for a full minute, before looking up at her with new respect in his eyes. "I don't think I can save this," he said quietly. Irina nodded, not in arrogance but in simple acknowledgement of the position. 5 moves to checkmate, she said. David studied the board again, tracing potential moves with his finger hovering above the pieces. Then he extended his hand. "I resign." "Well played, Mrs. Nowak, very well played indeed." The room erupted in excited conversation. Irina shook David's hand, feeling strangely lightheaded. She hadn't played 2 serious games of chess in decades, and now she had beaten both Anthony and the club champion in consecutive days. "Where did you learn that sacrifice combination?" David asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. It reminded me of Tal's style, but with a modern twist. Before Irina could answer, another voice cut through the crowd. "I want a rematch." Anthony pushed his way forward, his face set in determined lines. Gone was yesterday's condescension. Today he looked at Irina as an equal, or perhaps even as someone to be feared across the chessboard. "Not tonight, Anthony," Dr. Rivera said firmly. "Mrs. Nowak has work to do and we've taken enough of her time." "Actually," Irina said, surprising herself again, "I would like to play one more game." The cleaning could wait. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive, engaged in the pure language of chess that had been her private world for so long. Dr. Rivera studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. One more game." As Anthony sat down across from her and began setting up the pieces, Mr. Thompson leaned down to whisper in Irina's ear. "You know, we have a club tournament starting next week. The entry fee is normally quite steep, but I believe the board might be persuaded to make an exception in your case." Irina looked up at him in shock. "A tournament? Me? Why not?" he replied. "Based on what I've seen, you'd be a strong contender." The idea was so foreign, so unexpected, that Irina couldn't find words to respond. Her, playing in a chess tournament? A cleaning woman competing alongside doctors, lawyers, and business executives? "Think about it," Mr. Thompson said, patting her shoulder gently before stepping back to watch the new game unfold. Across the board, Anthony made his first move, his eyes focused and serious. As Irina reached for her piece, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the polished wood table. Not a cleaning woman now, but a chess player. Someone with a gift, someone who belonged. Your move, Anthony said. Irina moved her pawn forward, stepping once more into the world she had only observed from the shadows for so long. Whatever happened next, she knew her life at the Westfield Chess Club would never be the same again. Word about Irina spread through the chess community like wildfire. By the end of the week, the cleaning woman who could play chess was no longer just a curiosity, but a minor sensation. Club members who had never noticed her before now greeted her by name when she arrived for her shift. Some even offered to help her move tables or empty trash cans so she could finish earlier and play a game or two. The sudden attention made Irina uncomfortable. For years she had lived quietly, keeping to herself, finding comfort in routine and invisibility. Now people wanted to know her story. Where was she from? How had she learned to play so well? Why was she cleaning floors instead of competing in tournaments? You don't have to tell them anything you don't want to, Dr. Rivera told her one evening as they shared a cup of tea in the club kitchen. In just a few days, the club president had become something of a protector for Irina, shielding her from too much attention and making sure the members treated her with respect. It's not that, Irina said, warming her hands around the teacup. I'm not used to people seeing me. Dr. Rivera nodded, understanding in her eyes. Being seen can be as frightening as being invisible. The tournament was 3 days away. After much persuasion from Mr. Thompson and Dr. Rivera, Irina had agreed to enter. The club had waived the entry fee, and Dr. Rivera had even arranged for Irina to have the day off from her other cleaning jobs. Still, Irina was having second thoughts. What if I embarrass myself? She asked quietly. What if you don't? Dr. Rivera countered with a smile. Besides, it's just a game. But they both knew it wasn't just a game anymore. For Irina, it had become something much more significant. A chance to step out of the shadows, to be recognized for a skill rather than a service. The night before the tournament, Irina couldn't sleep. She paced the small apartment she had called home for the past 5 years. A modest one-bedroom unit in a building that had seen better days. The walls were thin, and she could hear her neighbor's television through the wall, some late-night show with canned laughter that made her feel even more alone. She opened the closet and stared at the outfit she had laid out for tomorrow. Her best dress? A simple navy blue one she wore to church on Sundays. It wasn't fancy, but it was the nicest thing she owned. Next to it hung her gray cleaning uniform, a stark reminder of who she really was. Irina sat on the edge of her bed and opened the small wooden box that contained her father's chess set. The pieces were hand-carved, some slightly uneven, the wood darkened with age and the oil from thousands of touches. She picked up the black queen, her father's favorite piece. The queen is the most powerful piece on the board, he used to tell her. But power isn't just about strength. It's about knowing when to move and when to wait. Irina had been waiting for a very long time. The tournament was held in the club's main hall, which had been transformed for the occasion. The usual scattered arrangement of tables had been replaced by neat rows of chessboards, each with a small number placard. Extra chairs had been brought in for spectators, and a refreshment table had been set up along one wall. Irina arrived 30 minutes early, clutching her handbag nervously. She had spent extra time on her appearance today, putting on a bit of makeup and styling her hair. As she entered, several people turned to look at her, and she heard whispers. That's her, the cleaning lady. Mr. Thompson hurried over to greet her, looking distinguished in a tweed jacket with leather patches at the elbows. Mrs. Nowak, so glad you made it. Let me show you where you'll be playing. He led her to a table near the center of the room. You're seated 10th out of 32 players, he explained. Based on your games this week, Irina blinked in surprise. 10th? But I've only played a few games. Quality over quantity, Mr. Thompson said with a wink. Besides, David's recommendation carries a lot of weight. He says you play like someone with a FIDE rating of at least 2,000. Irina didn't know what a FIDE rating was, but she could tell from Mr. Thompson's tone that it was a compliment. As the tournament began, Irina tried to focus only on the board in front of her, blocking out the unfamiliar environment and the curious glances. Her first opponent was a young woman in her 20s, a law student who played aggressively but with several tactical oversights that Irina quietly exploited. The game was over in less than an hour. Her second match was against an older man who introduced himself as a retired mathematics professor. He played methodically, each move carefully considered. The game stretched on, evolving into a complex middle game with an even position. But as the endgame approached, Irina's experience with pawn structures, learned through countless games with her father, gave her a slight edge that she gradually expanded into a winning advantage. By mid-afternoon, Irina had won 3 matches and was set to play in the quarterfinals. During the break, she sat alone in a corner, eating a sandwich that Dr. Rivera had brought her. She felt drained but exhilarated. Chess had always been a private joy for her, something she shared only with her father and later, after his death, with herself. Playing in public like this, with strangers watching and judging, was both terrifying and thrilling. "You're doing wonderfully," Dr. Rivera said, sitting down beside her. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," Irina admitted. "But good." "Your next opponent will be Thomas Wu," Dr. Rivera said. "He's very strong. Won the state championship 2 years ago." Irina nodded, feeling a flutter of nervousness. "I've seen him play," she said. "He likes the Sicilian defense." Dr. Rivera looked surprised. "You've been studying the members' playing styles while cleaning?" "Not studying exactly," Irina said with a small smile. "Just noticing." The quarterfinal match against Thomas Wu drew a larger crowd than Irina's previous games. Thomas was well known in the club, respected for his tactical brilliance and unflappable demeanor. He greeted Irina politely, his expression giving nothing away. The game began tensely, with both players making solid, careful moves. Irina played the white pieces this time, and she opened with a move she had seen Thomas struggle against in a game last month. He responded with a slight frown, clearly recognizing the potential challenge to his usual strategy. 20 moves in, the position was balanced but complex, with multiple threats and counter-threats simmering across the board. Irina found herself enjoying the mental challenge, the silent conversation of moves and ideas. This was what she had missed in all those years of playing alone, the dynamic exchange with another mind, the push and pull of competing visions. On move 27, Thomas made a subtle error, moving his knight to a square that seemed strong, but actually left a weakness in his pawn structure. It was the kind of mistake that most players wouldn't notice or exploit, but Irina saw it immediately, recognizing the pattern from a game her father had shown her decades ago. She didn't pounce right away. Instead, she made a quiet move, repositioning her bishop to a seemingly innocuous square. Thomas continued his plan, unaware of the trap being set. 3 moves later, Irina launched her combination, a bishop sacrifice followed by a queen move that threatened both checkmate and the capture of Thomas's rook. The room grew silent as people realized what was happening. Thomas stared at the board, his calm facade cracking slightly as he saw the depth of the trap. He had 2 possible responses, both leading to significant material loss. After 5 minutes of thought, he looked up at Irina with newfound respect. "I underestimated you," he said quietly. "That was beautifully played." He made his move, the better of 2 bad options, and the game continued for another 12 moves before he finally resigned. As they shook hands, the spectators broke into applause. "Semi-finals," Mr. Thompson said excitedly, appearing at Irina's side. "One more win and you'll be playing for the club championship." Irina barely heard him. She was looking past the crowd to the back of the room, where a familiar figure stood watching, Anthony, the young man whose challenge had started this whole journey. He met her eyes across the room and gave her a small acknowledging nod before slipping out the door. "Mrs. Nowak?" Mr. Thompson's voice broke through her thoughts. "Are you all right?" Irina turned back to him with a smile. "Yes," she said. "Just thinking about how strange life can be. A week ago I was invisible in this room. And now you're the star of the tournament," he replied. "Sometimes we find ourselves in the most unexpected places." As Irina gathered her things for the short break before the semi-finals, she thought about her father and wished he could see her now. He had always told her she had a gift, that she could be a great player someday. She had never believed him. Chess was just a game they played together, a way to forget the hardships of their life for a few hours. But perhaps he had been right after all. And perhaps this tournament was just the beginning of a journey she had delayed for far too long. The semi-final match was scheduled to begin in 30 minutes. Irina sat alone in a quiet corner of the club's reading room, trying to gather her thoughts. Her hands were steady, but inside she felt a storm of emotions, excitement, fear, pride, and an odd sense of guilt, as if she was somehow out of place in this world of competitive chess. A soft knock on the doorframe made her look up. Dr. Rivera stood there, holding 2 cups of tea. "I thought you might need this," she said, offering one to Irina. "Chamomile, good for nerves." "Thank you." Irina accepted the cup gratefully, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. "I didn't expect to get this far." Dr. Rivera sat down in the armchair opposite her. "But your father would have expected it, wouldn't he?" Irina looked up, surprised. "How did you know that?"
"The way you talk about him." Dr. Rivera sipped her tea.
"He must have been an excellent teacher." "He was." Irina smiled softly at the memory. He didn't have many books on chess, just one old manual with frayed pages. But he understood the heart of the game. He said chess wasn't about memorizing openings or studying grandmaster games. It was about seeing patterns and telling stories with the pieces. "Wise man," Dr. Rivera nodded. "Your next opponent could use that perspective. Viktor Petrov is technically brilliant, but sometimes he gets lost in the details and misses the bigger picture." Irina had seen Viktor play many times while cleaning the club in the evenings. A serious man in his 50s, he approached chess like a mathematician solving a complex equation, methodical, precise, and sometimes cold. "He will expect me to be nervous," Irina said thoughtfully. "To make mistakes, and will you?" Dr. Rivera asked with a slight smile. Irina thought about it. A week ago, the idea of playing in this tournament would have terrified her. But something had changed. With each game, she felt more of her old confidence returning, the pure joy of chess that she had shared with her father. "No," she said finally. "I don't think I will." When Irina entered the main hall, she was surprised by the size of the crowd. Word had spread beyond the club, and there were unfamiliar faces among the spectators, chess enthusiasts from other clubs, local news reporters, even a few curious onlookers who had heard about the cleaning woman challenging the club's elite players. Viktor Petrov was already seated at the board, arranging the pieces with mathematical precision. He looked up briefly as Irina approached, giving her a curt nod that neither welcomed nor dismissed her. For him, she was simply another opponent to be analyzed and defeated. As Irina sat down, she noticed something unexpected. On a small table nearby, someone had placed her cleaning cart, the one she had pushed around this very room countless times. On top of it was a small handwritten sign, "Mrs. Nowak's Lucky Charm." She felt a lump in her throat as she recognized the handwriting. It belonged to Tom, the night security guard who had always treated her with kindness. Looking around, she spotted him standing by the wall, giving her a thumbs up. Next to him was Rosa from the daytime cleaning staff, who had taken over some of Irina's duties this week. They weren't chess players, but they had come to support her. With a renewed sense of purpose, Irina turned her attention to the board. She was playing black, which meant Viktor would make the first move. He opened with his trademark Queen's Gambit, a solid, classical approach that had served him well over the years. Irina responded with a variation she had seen him struggle against in a game last winter. It wasn't the most common response, and Viktor's slight hesitation on his next move told her she had made the right choice. She had pushed him out of his comfort zone. The game developed slowly, with both players taking their time. Viktor's style was to build a solid position, gradually increasing the pressure until his opponent made a mistake. Irina countered with patient defense, waiting for the right moment to strike. 40 minutes into the game, that moment came. Viktor, perhaps growing impatient with Irina's resilience, pushed his attack a bit too aggressively. It wasn't a blunder, just a slight overextension that most players wouldn't be able to exploit. But Irina saw the opportunity immediately. She made a surprising knight move that seemed to retreat but actually set up a tactical sequence 3 moves deep. Viktor frowned, sensing the danger but unable to see the full extent of the trap. He spent nearly 10 minutes analyzing the position before making his next move. The crowd had grown silent, watching the battle unfold. Even those who weren't serious chess players could feel the tension in the air. Mr. Thompson stood nearby, nervously polishing his glasses. Dr. Rivera sat with her arms crossed, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Move by move, Irina's plan revealed itself. Her pieces coordinated beautifully, supporting each other and creating threats that Victor couldn't address all at once. When she finally launched her combination, sacrificing a rook for a devastating attack, there was an audible gasp from the spectators. Victor stared at the board, his face impassive but his eyes revealing his shock. After 5 minutes of analysis, he looked up at Irina. "I don't see a defense," he said quietly. "This is remarkable play." He extended his hand in resignation. As they shook hands, the room erupted in applause. Irina felt dizzy with emotion. She had made it to the final round. People gathered around her, offering congratulations and asking questions. Mr. Thompson was practically jumping with excitement, telling anyone who would listen that he had discovered her. Even some of the younger players who had initially mocked her were now looking at her with respect. Through the crowd, Irina spotted a familiar face, Anthony, the young man whose challenge had started this journey. He had returned to watch her semifinal match. When their eyes met, he gave her a small, respectful nod before slipping away again. As the excitement began to die down, Dr. Rivera approached with a serious expression. "Irina, there's someone who would like to meet you," she said. "He's traveled quite a distance." She led Irina to a quiet corner of the room where an elderly man waited. He was tall and thin with silver hair and intelligent eyes that studied her carefully. "Mrs. Nowak, this is Nikolai Volkov," Dr. Rivera said. "He's a chess master and coach from New York. He drove up specifically to watch you play today." Irina's eyes widened. She had heard of Volkov. He was famous for coaching several national champions. "It is an honor to meet you, Mrs. Nowak," Volkov said with a slight Russian accent. "I have been watching your games with great interest." "Thank you," Irina replied, feeling suddenly self-conscious. "But I'm just a beginner in tournaments," Volkov smiled. "Chess is not about tournaments. It is about how you think, how you see the board. You have a rare gift, a natural understanding of position and pattern. Your play reminds me of the great intuitive players like Capablanca or Tal." Irina felt her cheeks flush at the comparison to such legendary names. "My father taught me to see the board as a story, not just pieces." "A wise approach," Volkov nodded. "Tell me, have you ever considered teaching chess?" The question caught Irina by surprise. "Teaching? Me?" "I run a chess program for children in underprivileged neighborhoods," Volkov explained. "Many of these children have natural talent but no access to formal training. Someone like you, who understands chess at an intuitive level and knows what it means to overcome obstacles, could be an inspiration to them." Irina didn't know how to respond. The idea of teaching chess had never occurred to her. "You don't have to decide now," Volkov said, handing her a business card. "But think about it. Talent like yours should be shared." As he walked away, Irina stood still, turning the card over in her hands. First a player, now possibly a teacher. How quickly life could change. Mr. Thompson appeared at her side, breaking her reverie. "There you are. Everyone's asking about you. And wait until you hear who your opponent will be in the final." "Who?" Irina asked, still distracted by her conversation with Volkov. "David Chen. Our club champion." Mr. Thompson was practically bursting with excitement. "A rematch of your first big game. It's perfect." Irina felt a flutter of nerves. David was the strongest player in the club, and their previous game had been close. He would be much better prepared this time, having seen her play throughout the tournament. "The final is tomorrow afternoon," Mr. Thompson continued. "Will you be ready tomorrow?" Irina suddenly remembered that she was scheduled to clean 3 houses tomorrow, regular clients who depended on her. "I have work," she said. "Important clients," Mr. Thompson's face fell. "Can't you reschedule? This is the club championship." Irina hesitated. Chess was her passion, but cleaning was her livelihood. She couldn't afford to lose clients, especially not the Saturday ones who paid extra. "I'll see what I can do," she said finally. As the crowd began to disperse, Irina gathered her things to leave. She had calls to make, arrangements to try to work out. But as she passed by her cleaning cart, her lucky charm, she paused, running her fingers along the familiar handle. A week ago, she had been invisible in this room, just the woman who emptied the trash and vacuumed the carpets. Now she was heading to the championship match with people asking for her autograph and a chess master offering her a teaching position. Quite a journey, isn't it? Dr. Rivera said, appearing beside her. Irina nodded, unable to find the words to express how she felt. Whatever happens tomorrow, Dr. Rivera said gently, you've already won something more valuable than any trophy. As Irina stepped out into the cool evening air, she thought about what that might be. Respect, recognition, a new beginning, perhaps all of these things. But most importantly, she had reclaimed a part of herself that had been hidden away for too long. Her father's daughter, the chess player with stories to tell. Irina barely slept that night. Her small apartment felt different somehow, as if the walls had shifted slightly while she wasn't looking. She moved restlessly from room to room, picking things up and putting them down again, unable to settle. Finally, she sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea and her father's old chess set. She touched each piece gently, remembering the countless games they had played. Her father had been a factory worker with rough hands and a gentle soul. Chess had been his escape from a hard life, and he had passed that gift on to her. What would you think of all this, Papa? She whispered to the empty room. Early the next morning, Irina called her Saturday clients. She had cleaned for the Wilsons for 5 years, the Patels for 3, and Mrs. Okonkwo for nearly 7. They were good people who paid her fairly and treated her with respect. Asking to reschedule felt like betraying their trust. To her surprise, they were all understanding. A chess tournament? How wonderful, Mrs. Wilson exclaimed. My husband loves chess. He'll be so impressed when I tell him our cleaning lady is a chess champion. Not a champion yet, Irina corrected gently. Well, you will be after today, Mrs. Wilson said confidently. Don't worry about our house. We can wait until Monday. By 9 o'clock, Irina had rescheduled all her clients. She spent the rest of the morning preparing for the match, reviewing the games she had played against David and studying his style. She knew he would be a formidable opponent, methodical, patient, and extremely knowledgeable. Around noon, her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. Hello? She answered cautiously. Mrs. Nowak? This is Luis Rivera, Helena's husband. She mentioned you might need a ride to the club today. Irina was touched by the thoughtfulness. Normally, she took 2 buses to reach the chess club, a journey that took nearly an hour. That would be very kind, she said. Thank you. When Luis arrived, Irina was surprised to see Dr. Rivera in the car as well, along with a teenage girl who had her mother's intelligent eyes. This is our daughter, Anna, Dr. Rivera explained as Irina got into the car. She insisted on coming to watch the championship match. I've been following your games, Anna said excitedly. Mom says you learned to play from your dad just like I did. Irina smiled at the girl, feeling a connection. Yes, my father taught me when I was about your age. Anna is quite a promising player herself, Dr. Rivera said proudly. She just won her school championship. The drive to the club was filled with chess talk, favorite openings, famous games, tournament strategies. For the first time, Irina found herself speaking about chess as a peer, not as an outsider looking in. It felt strange but wonderful. When they arrived at the club, Irina was shocked by the crowd. The parking lot was full and people were lined up outside the entrance. Word got out, Luis explained with a grin. Everyone wants to see the championship match. Inside, the club had been transformed. The main hall was set up with a single chess table in the center, surrounded by chairs for spectators. A professional-looking chess clock sat on the table, along with a beautiful wooden board and pieces that Irina recognized as the club's special set, normally kept in a glass case. Mr. Thompson hurried over, looking both excited and nervous. There you are. We were getting worried. The crowd is larger than expected. We've had to limit entry for fire safety reasons. Irina glanced around, feeling suddenly overwhelmed. All these people are here for a chess game? Not just any chess game, Mr. Thompson said. Your story has touched people, Irina. The cleaning woman who became a chess sensation overnight. It's the kind of thing that inspires people. Before Irina could respond, David approached. The club champion looked calm and focused, dressed in a crisp button-down shirt and slacks. He extended his hand to Irina. I've been looking forward to our rematch, he said with genuine respect in his voice. Whatever happens today, you've earned your place at this board. Their handshake was warm and firm, equals meeting over 64 squares. As they took their seats, The crowd settled into a hushed silence. Irina would play white this time, giving her the first move advantage. She took a deep breath, centering herself as her father had taught her, and moved her king's pawn forward 2 squares, the same opening move she had made in their first game. David responded quickly, and the game began to unfold. This time both players moved with greater caution, aware of each other's strengths. David had clearly studied Irina's previous games, adjusting his strategy to counter her tactical style. Irina, in turn, varied her approach, playing more positionally than she had before. The first hour passed in intense concentration. Neither player gained a significant advantage, though subtle shifts in the position created small ebbs and flows of pressure. Irina was vaguely aware of the crowd around them, of the occasional whispers and movement, but her world had narrowed to the board between them. During a particularly complex sequence, Irina found herself thinking of the kitchen table where her father had taught her, of his patient voice explaining concepts that seemed beyond her childish understanding. "Chess is like life," he used to say. "Every move has consequences, but there is always another move to make." Midway through the game, David launched a surprising attack, sacrificing a knight for what appeared to be a strong kingside assault. The crowd murmured with excitement. It was a bold, aggressive move from a player known for his solid, conservative style. Irina studied the position carefully. She could see 3 possible responses: a counter-sacrifice that would lead to a wild tactical melee, a solid defensive move that would give up some territory but maintain structural integrity, or an unexpected queen move that looked risky but might turn the tables completely. Her father would have chosen the third option. He always preferred creative solutions over standard responses. But Irina had developed her own style over the years, perhaps less flashy than his, but effective in its quiet strength. She chose the second option, the solid defense. David looked slightly surprised, having perhaps expected her to accept the tactical challenge. The game continued, with David pressing his attack and Irina defending patiently, looking for counter opportunities. They were 2 hours into the match when the critical position arose. David had maintained pressure but hadn't been able to break through Irina's defense. Now, with both players running low on time, the complexity of the position demanded decisive action. Irina saw her chance, a subtle rook move that appeared defensive, but actually set up a devastating counterattack. It was the kind of move that wasn't obvious unless you could see 4 or 5 moves ahead. She made the move calmly, then pressed the clock. David frowned, sensing the danger but unable to immediately identify it. He spent nearly 10 minutes analyzing the position, the ticking clock adding to the pressure. Finally, he made his move, not the one Irina had anticipated. The unexpected response forced her to recalculate her plan. As she studied the new position, she realized that David had found a resource she hadn't considered. Her planned combination wouldn't work as she had intended. For a moment, doubt crept in. Had she overreached? Was her lack of tournament experience finally showing? She closed her eyes briefly, centering herself again. She could almost hear her father's voice. There is always another move to make. When she opened her eyes, she saw it. A different approach. Not as flashy as her original plan, but potentially more effective. It would require sacrificing her queen, the most powerful piece on the board, for a positional advantage that might only bear fruit many moves later. It was a profound strategic decision, the kind that revealed a player's true understanding of chess. Without further hesitation, Irina made the queen's sacrifice. A collective gasp went through the audience. Even David looked stunned, taking several minutes to convince himself that she had indeed voluntarily given up her queen. When he finally captured it, his expression was one of wary respect. He knew Irina wouldn't have made such a sacrifice without good reason. The next phase of the game was a masterclass in positional chess. Without her queen, Irina coordinated her remaining pieces with remarkable precision. Her bishops controlled long diagonals, her knights found powerful outposts, and her rooks commanded open files. David found himself slowly being squeezed. His material advantage counterbalanced by Irina's superior piece activity. With less than 5 minutes left on his clock, David made a critical error, not a blunder, but a slight misjudgment that allowed Irina's pieces to penetrate his position. 3 moves later, he found himself in a zugzwang, a position where any move he made would worsen his situation. After a long pause, David tipped his king over, the universal sign of resignation. The room erupted in applause. Irina sat motionless for a moment, hardly believing what had just happened. She had won. She was the club champion. David stood and extended his hand across the board. "Extraordinary play," he said with genuine admiration. "I've never seen a more beautiful queen sacrifice." As they shook hands, the crowd surged forward. Mr. Thompson was there with the championship trophy, Dr. Rivera with a bouquet of flowers. Cameras flashed, and someone from a local newspaper asked for a statement. Through it all, Irina felt strangely calm. This moment, her moment of triumph, felt both extraordinary and somehow inevitable, as if her life had been moving toward it all along. Later that evening, after the celebration had died down,